at the Everyday Language Learner, and I am joined by Dr. James Asher today for this interview. Dr. Asher originated the stress-free total physical response approach to second language acquisition, which is known internationally as TPR. It's been developed over 30 years of research in the laboratory, in the classroom, and it's resulted in TPR really being used all around the world to teach all kinds of languages. I've been hearing from people all week long as I've been kind of doing some research about how they're using it. And so I am really excited to be joined by Dr. Asher today. Thank you for being with us.
You bet, Aaron.
Well, I was wondering if we could begin just by hearing a little bit just about you and yourself, even as a language learner. What languages have you learned, and what has your language learning journey looked like?
Well, that begins 50 years ago, and I represent millions of students out there who invested massive amounts of work trying to learn Latin. I went to a parochial school, Spanish, French, German, and was able to do all of the tricks that they required. Conjugate this verb, memorize this list of vocabulary, study. I did all the tricks, got an A or a B, and walked out with very little gain.
Sure.
And so the problem is, I wanted to find out why. Now, the traditional language instructors almost convinced me that it was my fault, which is what they've done with millions of students. They blame themselves, and I understand this perfectly because I'm one of them. So I wanted to find out why. And that began 50-year journey into foreign languages. I never expected to get into it this deeply and so thoroughly.
Yeah.
Got a breakthrough. You know, you work with something long enough and you get a marvelous breakthrough. And what I discovered was that the equation that was being used in the 19th century, and it's still used by thousands of instructors. They're kind of in a dogmatic slumber. And as a matter of fact, 50 years from now, I think that we'll look back on this and we'll say this was cruel and unusual punishment for young people. As a matter of fact, if an instructor, I used to be very tolerant because I figured they didn't understand, but now the information is so widespread that if people continue on with this 19th century model, which I call slow motion learning, word by word, driving people crazy and simply convincing them that they're no good at foreign languages. That's all you've accomplished. If we continue on, I think, well, I want to say something outrageous. I think these traditional instructors now, at this point in time, really should be criminally prosecuted because it's like malpractice in medicine. You're harming people and you're negligent, and therefore it's a criminal offense. How do you like that?
Well, that's a pretty strong statement, but
it is a strong statement, and that's exactly the way I present it to educators around the world now. You should know, you should be aware, and if you ain't aware, then really you shouldn't be in the profession.
Sure.
Now, for example, community college that we have here, I got a brochure. The brochure said that we're offering, watch this, conversational Spanish, conversational Italian, conversational Japanese, what else? Conversational Portuguese. Well, the minute I see that, I know that you're on the wrong side of the brain. You've got a 19th century model that you're still working with, and you're offering this for adults, seniors. Hey, all you're going to do is convince them they can't learn Spanish.
Sure.
They can't learn Italian. They can't learn Portuguese. That's the only thing you're going to accomplish. If you begin trying to teach another person to speak directly, In fact, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's well, it isn't possible. Let me put it to you that way. It's an illusion. When speaking appears in a foreign language, language learning has already taken place because the first step is comprehension. And where do we get that? Well, hey, it isn't a mystery. All you have to do is observe infants, and they are developing comprehension for at least a year before they say mommy or daddy.
Yeah.
At least a year. And what's happening? Well, in the brain, they are developing a map of the target language. And when the map is detailed enough, speaking appears.
Sure.
It occurs in every language, in every generation, throughout history. We've never had people speaking before comprehension is extensively developed. Never, as far as infants go. Now, what makes you think you're smarter than nature? You're going to beat nature. You ain't going to beat nature.
Yeah.
So this is so obvious to me now and so clear. Comprehension first before you do anything. That's
Sure.
the first step.
Sure.
There you have it. I see the UPS truck is arriving.
That's good. So
What else?
well,
what
I was
else?
just thinking about just you're a psychologist, I see. I
Yes.
think. And just how did a psychologist get to developing? What was the process like of kind of going through that research and then developing TPR? Was it a slow process? Did you have kind of an aha moment where it all sort of fell into place? Or
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, I had trouble with, I wasn't satisfied with foreign languages or mathematics. And incidentally, mathematics is a foreign language. So we're going to throw that in there. So we've been on the wrong side of the brain with foreign languages and mathematics. We gave the students the illusion that this is difficult. It's strictly an illusion. It's all a myth. As a matter of fact, let me present another thought to you. It's not a matter of putting a funnel in the student's ear and pouring information in. We already know all this. It's in our DNA. We know it. We know all languages. My job as an instructor is to release what you already know, not putting something into you. All right. Well, anyway, now, all we had to do was switch to the other side of the brain, and the thing would have gone in with just like butter, like going through butter.
Yeah.
Now, there are certain key words that I hear. When I hear them, I know you're on the wrong side of the brain. Here are the words. You ready?
I'm ready.
If you hear the word memorize, you're on the left side of the brain, which means it's operating against you and the students. You're simply working against yourself. If you see the word study, another key word, tells me that the left side doesn't want this information, and you're going to have to repeat it. I mean, you're going to have to do all kinds of enormous work. Incidentally, if you see work, you're on the wrong side of the brain. Translate, you're on the wrong side of the brain. Memorize this dialogue, memorize this verb declension, wrong side of the brain. Wrong. You're working against the students and you're working against yourself. Now, why that message is still mysterious to thousands of instructors is the most baffling thing to me.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the questions I had was what is, I mean, and maybe you don't know, but what is the pushback? What are the purists out there saying, like, why aren't they embracing this?
Why aren't they getting it?
Yeah.
My best analogy is going back to the 19th century with Dr. Joseph Lister, who was the father of antiseptic surgery. Now, he was looking at the work of Louis Pasteur in France, and he concluded that surgeons were killing their patients. Now, here's the message. So he began developing the following recommendations. Wash your hands before you go to the next patient. Very simple, right?
Yeah.
I want you to sterilize your tools. I don't want you just dipping them in plain water or wiping them on your apron. I want you to shave. Having a beard was part of being a surgeon. Having blood on your apron, the more blood, the more successful you were as a surgeon. All right, now, so he said he would go to them, and that was his message. And here's what they said. They said, oh, yeah, we've heard of Louis Pasteur in France. We've heard about that, the germ theory. Well, let me tell you what I think about that. If I can't see it, it doesn't exist. And furthermore, we've done this for hundreds of years. Louis Pasteur is a chemist, not a surgeon. What does he know about medicine? We've always done it this way. So Lister was saying, look, you're responsible for infant mortality. Are you telling me that I'm killing these babies? I'm killing the mothers? He said, well, he had to do it more diplomatically, but the answer was yes.
Yeah.
You are killing. They said, that's outrageous. That is absolutely. So he finally concluded that this was an impossible task.
Wow.
And that will only make progress in medicine and surgery funeral by funeral until all these guys drop dead. And then he went into the medical schools. He said, we'll have to start right at the beginning, fresh. And that's when we started slowly to break through. Well, I'm really quite surprised that a new generation of language teachers still are hanging on to this 19th century model.
Yeah.
They still, part of it is, all right, another outrageous statement. I'm going to blame the universities for this because these professors apparently are presenting these models as credible.
Sure.
And they're not credible. They're absolutely not credible. Stop it. Stop it. Isn't that horrible?
Well, I hope that just as Joseph Lister won the day eventually, that you can win the day as well.
I noticed that when you go in to see your doctor, they have a sign up, be sure the doctor washes his hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So we finally got the message, but it's been 50 years now, and I'm amazed that everybody doesn't have it. I'll tell you who has it. The people in the field, the practitioners who actually have to deal with students, have discovered that, my God, we can't keep doing this. I mean, it doesn't work. They're smart, and they're not stupid.
Right.
And there's things they told us at the university, I don't believe them. Mm-hmm. They discover this, they try it, and they said, oh my God, this actually works. And then we got them moving in the right direction.
Right.
So we've made tremendous progress.
Yeah. Now, you touched on this earlier, and I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about it. The research on the brain, the left brain, the right brain. In another article that I read, you talked about brain switching. But can you tell us a little bit about this and the importance of it, and then kind of what are the practical implications for like me as kind of an independent language learner?
What we're talking about is the brain, really. We're not talking about foreign languages. We're not talking about mathematics. We're talking about how do you play the brain. In the last 60 years, we've learned more about how the brain works than we knew in the last 6,000 years. We're very sophisticated, but it's limited to a small number of researchers. Slowly, now everyone's heard of the right-left brain, but what are the implications for what we do every day and how we deal with people? That's still mysterious. Well, let me give you just kind of trying to help you understand a little bit about how absolutely critical this is. You've got to read the minds of your students. You're trying to convince somebody of something. You got to know what side of the brain they're on at all times. Now, for example, if I try and explain something or lecture, I know I'm on the left side of the brain. I mean, that automatically flashes on. If I talk to you, just talking right now, that's left brainish. Arguing, debating, discussing, reasoning, all these things are left brainish. Now, what does the left brain do? Well, Sigmund Freud had a pretty good approximation of how the brain works. Now, in the latest wonderful research with neuroimaging, where we put sensors on and we can see what part of your brain flashes on when we do certain things, we've discovered Freud thought that the left side, the conscious side, you and I are operating right now with that conscious brain, we're talking. He thought that was the dominant side of the brain. Well, we now believe, we got wonderful evidence, that's the minor side. It's the least important side. Mm-hmm. But it's the side that keeps us safe and sane. For example, if you ever had a friend say to you, well, Aaron, I got a real problem. What if I get your advice? You say, sure. They explain the problem, and you come up with possible ways of handling it. Instantly, they'll come up with 5 ways why it can't be done. That's the left brain protecting us, really, wants to keep us doing what we've always done. Sure. Watch people in the supermarket, watch them walking around. They'll look at a product, they'll pick it up, and they'll say, I've never heard of this. Well, what they're saying is, that's why the commercials, you've got to hear them over and over and over again. They want, when you pick that product up, they want you to say, oh, I've heard of this. It must be okay. Anything that's familiar, we're comfortable with, we want to stay with it, we're safe. And that's part of what the left brain does. Very important. Keeps us sane. We rehearse things before we ever say, especially to the opposite sex. We're very careful. Oh, wait a minute now. I don't want to say that to her. Sure. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say this to you. You'll think I'm crazy. If we said everything that came into our minds, we certainly would take us off to the insane asylum. We're constantly filtering out, wait a minute. What is sensible here? What is reasonable? What is it? I don't want to offend this person. I don't want to say this. Mm-hmm. So that's the left brain. It's really just a switchboard. It's going over to the right. It's asking for information. This is why if you listen carefully to people on television being interviewed, they say, That's a slight bit of time to allow the right brain to come up with answers. Now, a professional speaker learns to eliminate that, and they learn not to be afraid of silence. They don't, if it doesn't appear, they won't say anything, and they're not afraid of it. But that's another skill entirely. Mm-hmm. Now, the right side of the brain is the pattern seeker. It knows everything. It's operating. Look how many billions of computations it's making for you right now. Sure. About your chemistry, about what's going on in your body. Billions of decision making, right? Right. It has all this information. Also, it has all your experiences already there. It knows things that we really, I think the 21st century, we may begin to probe this mystery. I mean, we only have a little tiny understanding of how this thing works. But if you ask it to solve a problem, if you ask it for information, it will work for you day and night, as long as you don't abort with, I guess there's no answer. If you say that, then it says, well, I don't want to put any more energy into this thing. Right. So the right side of the brain accounts for about 5/6 of electrical activity, and the left side accounts for about 1/6. The brain knows the answer at least a half a second or more before you do. So it kind of gives you a picture. Now, how do I know you're on the right side? Well, here's how I know. If you're telling me a story, you're on the right side of the brain. And incidentally, the most outstanding teacher of all time was Jesus Christ. And notice, There was no lecturing involved here. It was one story after another,
Sure.
called parables, right?
Yeah.
Well, those parables crossed over all cultures, all languages, all generations. That's right brain. Now, I think that message itself tells you something very important. Creating a metaphor is extremely powerful for touching on that right side of the brain. I'll give you an example. You'd like to get an A, wouldn't you? You're in the class, right? You want to get an A. All right, here's how you get an A. If I ask you, how long have dinosaurs been on Earth compared to human beings? Now, if you tell me, well, dinosaurs have been here for 100 million years, and human beings have been here for a few million, you get an A. Bingo, you're happy. Take the A home to mom and dad. Oh, you're a smart little guy. Good. Well, let me give you a metaphor. You really learned something, yes, but you didn't understand it.
Right.
If the existence of the Earth is 24 hours, dinosaurs were here for 1 or 2 hours, and we've been here 1 or 2 minutes.
Sure.
The metaphor is one of the most powerful ways of accessing that right side. And incidentally, it's very powerful for getting understanding in the first exposure for foreign languages or mathematics or anything, science. If you come up with a metaphor, these kids can get it bango. And incidentally, the more times I have to explain this to you, the lower the probability it goes into long-term retention. This is why, hey, cramming for a test, you know, you're going to stay up all night? Okay. What you've done is fatigued the left side of the brain, which began with, I don't want this information, I'm not interested. And the left side says, okay, look, I'm so tired, Aaron. I am so fatigued. I'll hang on to it until this test.
Yeah.
And when it's over, I'm going to erase it. And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah. Everyone can relate to
the
that.
more times you have to present it, the less the probability of retention. So I give you some feeling for how the right and the left are operating. They're mirror images of each other. Now, the right side of the brain cannot speak. The left side is the talker. Right now, I'm on the left side of my brain. It can speak, but it can faintly whisper. This is why if you're relaxing or you're shaving, you're doing something mechanical with your hands, suddenly you say, oh my God, I've got a great idea. Yeah, it got through. That faint message from the right brain got through to you. You say, oh wow, I've got a wonderful idea. So it can't talk, but it can sing, incidentally. That's on the right side of the brain. Singing is, talking is on the left. Whispering. Guy by the name of, I want to say Caliente, but it isn't Caliente. He did a marvelous job in the inner city teaching inner city kids calculus. And I watched him. And intuitively, he understood how to try and get to the right side of the brain with these kids. For example, he'd walk around, they're working, and he'd whisper in their ear, hey, you're doing a great job. Wonderful job. Let me show you something here. He didn't understand what he was doing, but what he was doing by whispering is he had made a brain switch from the left to the right, which is extremely powerful. Gesturing. You watch people's hands? Watch my hands now. That's the right side trying to help me. It can gesture. We go this way, that way. Incidentally, I want you to try a little experiment.
All right.
I want you to take a friend out, stop somebody on the street, and ask them a direction. Have your friend, I don't know, you might get arrested for this, I don't know. Have your friend hold their arms down. Look, give them a hug so they can't move. You want to know something? They'll be unable to give you directions.
Huh.
Watch people, they'll orient their body. They'll say, look, let me see. It goes this way, $5, and then it's that way. if they didn't do this, I don't think they'd be able to give you directions at all,
Yeah.
because the right brain would be turned off.
Well, that's an example I think I read in one of the papers you sent where the kids had done TPR, and then they asked them a question and someone they gave them a command, scratch your neck. And
Yes.
they held their arms down and the kids started to move, but then they
Yes.
weren't able to say it, like they couldn't. And then when they released it, they kind of reached up and rubbed, oh, you told me to, after they did it. And that was a really...
Well, you've hit another very profound piece of information. This is my belief, based on what I've seen. I think the right and the left are monitoring each other. They're constantly, it's going back and forth. So that the left side of the brain is looking, with my hands, it's looking at my hands and it's trying to get some information out of this thing. They're both watching each other. And here's my advice for seniors who are having problems with memory. You don't remember where you parked your car. You don't remember where your keys are. You don't remember where you put your medicine. I want you to talk to yourself. In the old days, we say, if you talk to yourself, you're crazy. No, you're not crazy at all. Because by talking, if I say, I'm putting my keys right on the desk, right here, you want to know something? I'll go right back to those keys because the right side heard it.
Sure.
Now, you can't just think it because it's not a mind reader. So you have to say, hey, when I park my car, we always look around and I'll say, you'll see a sign A1. A1, I've got to make an association with A1. A1, well, I think there's an A1 sauce. There's an A1, all right, I'll visualize that. We go right back to the car. There's no problem.
Yeah.
Talk to yourself. Look around and pay attention. It's not enough just to look. You have to talk so the right side can hear it. And it says, okay, I know exactly what you want. I know exactly what you want. Now, that takes a little bit of training. That takes training. But this is one thing we can do that would be very helpful to millions of people.
Yeah.
They don't realize this.
Yeah, it's an easy one, too.
It's an easy one. It's easy. Most of this is easy.
Yeah.
Most of this is very easy.
Well, there's another question. One of the things I hear often is, and it's generally just in talking with people, and they start talking, especially our kids learned Turkish. We lived in Turkey. They say, oh, kids learn language so much faster than adults. So you've been studying this for all these years.
Yes.
What are your findings?
Well, here's the findings. This is interesting. I've actually done an experiment using Russian. We had children of different ages and adults. And here's what we came up with. If you're on the right side of the brain, adults will always outperform children. And older children will outperform younger children. So this is a myth. The great advantage of young children is with pronunciation. If we can get you before puberty, the chances of a near native pronunciation are extremely high. If it's after puberty, you can stay in the country in Turkey for 50 years and you'll always have an accent of some type. Very few people will escape without an accent.
Yeah.
So the key is they do have an advantage with pronunciation, which is important, but not with learning. We can outperform them every time.
Yeah.
Now, I know this goes against the conventional.
Well, and it seems what's happening, though, is people are actually comparing apples to oranges, that adults are trying to learn it through the left brain. Kids are learning it in their right brain.
Of course.
And so It's not even a fair comparison unless you can help adults.
Incidentally, watch children. They're picking this up in play, which is right brainish. It's all right brain. It's all total physical response, which is what the message I've been presenting.
Yeah.
Adults, look what we do to you. Look at this. Look at this. We say, come on in. Sit down in these rows of... The minute we say sit down, we have turned off the right side of the brain, and I'm working... Everything I do works against you and works against me.
Right.
Because I'm on the left side, and that doesn't want it. Left side does not want this. It's not a great fan of schools.
Yeah.
It's not because a school is an agent of change, and it's very suspicious of this. So unless an instructor could quiet that left side of the brain, all those messages, why am I here? Here are the kids talking to themselves. Does this person know what they're talking about? Is this really going to help me? Is this going to get me a job? I don't think so. I don't think declining this verb is going to relate. We present word problems in mathematics, those convoluted word problems. And the kid is looking at this, and the messages are, this is nonsense. Will this ever come up in my lifetime? The answer is the youngsters are absolutely right. It will never come up in your lifetime. It is nonsense. And the problem is, unless the instructor is honest and says right up front, look, this is nonsense. This is a puzzle. It's not important. It's never going to come up. It's just here to help you apply a little bit of algebraic code. Unless you do that, they're going to walk away saying, I didn't get it. I don't understand it. I think there's something wrong. I'm no good at mathematics. I'm no good at math. I'm no good at foreign languages. Guess I can't learn Italian. Are you kidding? We already know Italian. It's already in our DNA. All those languages are. Sure. Hey, if we start in preschool on the proper side of the brain, playing the brain properly, those kids can graduate with 12 languages easily with no work involved here, Aaron.
Yeah.
Now, I know this is so startling to so many people because they feel if you ain't working, sweating, stressed, studying, serious, well, it just is not legitimate learning. Yeah. And it's all a myth. That's the tragedy here. It's absolutely a myth. Now, we don't have time to do this anymore. Things have speeded up. I don't have time to go with a 19th century model for foreign languages, science, and mathematics. I mean, that's gone. Stop it. Stop.
Yeah.
Get with the brain. Get with the latest research. Well, anyway, that's my message.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And I think it's really listening to it is really freeing. I think part of it is it feels like we've been trained in school for so long. And what you're talking about, it kind of goes against everything that school seems about. And maybe
isn't that true?
And maybe that
yes.
structure of school is really the problem.
Yes.
That when people hear this, they're like, well, that's not how we do it.
Yes.
But just as we're thinking about it, like I'm primarily trying to help independent language learners. And just thinking about it, what are some of the, key principles, and we've talked about some of these that like I, as an independent language learner, as an adult that is really out trying to learn languages on my own and outside of the classroom, what are kind of the key principles that I need to keep in mind as I'm developing my own kind of personal curriculum or personal plan to go about getting the language? And
okay, I'll let you in on the secret. I mean, it's so simple. First thing I want you to do is to, and I know this sounds like I'm self-serving, but I don't know any other way to say it. I want you to read my book on learning another language through actions. I want you to read it 6 times. As Jim Martinez in Brazil said, I read your book 6 times. Every time I got something different out of it. That's step 1. Step 2 is you find someone, a native speaker of whatever the language is, to work with you. It doesn't have to be a teacher. It just has to be someone you're comfortable with. You are going to direct this person in what you want them to do. You're going to direct them, and you're going to have several hundred language body conversations. And my book, we have lessons in there to show you exactly what to do. So this can be done. Now, another suggestion I have, very powerful. Go to my website and take a look at TPR student kits. This is low-tech stuff. And what it amounts to is, maybe I have an example here somewhere. Hold on. Oh, let's see. Well, anyway, we have a playboard. Got 22 different playboards. One is the classroom, the hospital, the home, the main street, garden, farming, gas station, 22 different situations. And then we've got, whole, doggone it, should have an example here. Anyway, some stick-ons. Take them and you listen to the direction. The direction is take the man and put him into the bedroom that has the blue wall. Mm-hmm. You watch your native speaker do it. You listen to what they're saying. They do it. You do it in your kit. Mm-hmm. And within a few minutes, I've experimented with this and played with this for many years. Amazing how much you can pick up in just very quickly, short period of time.
Oh, that's great.
So that's very powerful. So there's a couple of ideas to get you going.
Yeah. Are other things like
books
or watching movies that are, like, or children's cartoons that you're familiar with, where are those things helpful?
Wait a minute. Let's see if this comes up. This is the main street here. Oh, I don't know if you can see it.
Yep, I see it. Sure.
Yeah. Oh, you got these. Well, there's the home, for example. How low tech can you get?
Yeah.
And here are the various figures that you can just take off, stick on, stick on the location. Pick up the man, pick up the woman, the boy, the girl. I mean, we have hundreds of different possibilities here. Within a few minutes, you get a huge chunk of the target language you've internalized. Right. Well, that's so simple that can't miss. Yeah. What else?
Well, that's the thing. As I was trained as an ESL teacher, and we definitely talked about TPR. I saw some good examples of that. TPR, storytelling, things like that. But I think one of the things was it was always kind of as a teaching technique, and so it's good to hear kind of how you can turn that around as an independent language learner to pull the language out using these methods. So it's really good.
Well, you mentioned another interesting thing. If I may comment on it, you mentioned methods. Well, it's a favorite word of language instructors. As far as I'm concerned, there are no methods in learning languages or learning anything, and here's the reason. Method implies a formula, and formula implies science. Teaching is an art. It's the highest art form there is. And since it is an art, it depends on the talent and the skill of the instructor. There is no mechanical way of becoming an outstanding teacher.
Right.
So I would eliminate, in fact, I always ask these educators to eliminate methods from their vocabulary. There is no such thing. Hey, look, I mentioned it's the highest art form. Let's think about this for a moment. I worked in television. I have a master's degree in radio and television. And I know that, for example, 3 minutes on film is an eternity. Yeah. And 1 hour is 10 eternities. Now imagine 1 hour of trying to hold your attention on television or movies or Broadway. We've got a whole army of people to make this come true. We just don't have one person standing up there, but that's exactly what we're asking you to do. You're one person. You're going to be the director, the writer, the producer, the presenter, and all we're going to give you is maybe a chalkboard in an empty room and say, hey, hold their attention for an entire hour. I don't know many actors who would have the courage to do this, yet we're asking you to do it.
Yeah.
That has to be the highest art form there is.
Yeah. Well, that teaching, for sure. 2 more questions for you, and they're a little lighter. and we'll kind of wrap things up here. But the first one I had, the second to the last, is Americans tend to have a really terrible reputation as language learners. Do you think that's true? Are we really the worst language learners in the world, or is there any change happening?
I think the only reason that there's another illusion, another myth, there's nothing wrong with this at all. Of course, we've been trying to jam it into the wrong side of the brain all this time. No, I don't blame teachers. I don't blame students. It has nothing to do with Americans or what country you're in. It just has to do with what side of the brain you're playing to. Now, when we go to Europe or some of these other countries, such a tremendous need to know that no matter what you present to them, they'll stick with it. If you stay with something, I don't care even if it's grammar translation,
Right.
if you stay with it long enough, you'll break through. You'll eventually break through. That's why when I go to the Scandinavian countries especially, they speak impeccable English. Well, they started in preschool and they continued on, and because it's so important to them, they were able to have the discipline to repeat, memorize, study, work, stress. They were willing to do all that for 12 years. Yeah, they wound up speaking impeccable English. I understand that. But you and I don't have that motivation, really.
Right.
I go 12, a couple thousand miles in any direction, everybody's speaking English.
Right. Yeah.
So there's no pressing need there.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a different environmental
It's
situation
different entirely. Now, the other thing is that's interesting, I like to tell educators around the world, hang on just a moment. I like to tell them, you only have 5 minutes to convince your students that they can actually learn Italian or Spanish or Turkish. You can't do it in 5 minutes. I don't care if they stay with you an entire year. Still, part of their brain is saying, I can't do this. I can't do it. In fact, they don't even believe there is such a language.
Yeah.
Unless they're actually living in Turkey.
Right.
And you're trying to teach them Turkish. Give you an example. I was in, I think it was Philadelphia one time, and a teacher at the break came up and said, I want to share something with you, because I told them I don't think the student's brain, I don't think they actually believe there is such a language. She said, I told my students in Spanish, beginning of the year, if you give me every bit of attention and energy you can, at the end of the year, I want to take you all out and I'm going to treat you to a Mexican meal. I will instruct everybody in the restaurant to speak to you in Spanish, and we'll have a wonderful time. Okay, end of the year, the kids did their very best. She walks in the restaurant. The students are behind her. Somehow they got her reservation mixed up. In very fast Spanish, she's trying to work it out with the maitre d'. She turned and she heard one of the little girls say, my God, there actually is a language like this. Now, this entire year, she didn't believe there was a language of Spanish. Even though she had gone through all this, part of the brain is working against you.
Sure. Well, and we teach language in such sanitized classroom environments where, like, it might not even be, like, a kid might not even make that connection, like that we're actually supposed to use this to speak with native speakers because they've never met a native speaker. We never bother to bring them into the classroom or to go out into the community. Yeah. No,
exactly. Well, the brain is there to keep us doing what we've always done. I don't really need this strange. Why would I need this strange language? I'm doing very well with English.
Yeah.
I don't need it.
Yeah, connecting kids to...
Those sabotaging messages are working on the student constantly.
Right. Yeah, somehow we need to connect them to that purpose. Yeah.
Mathematics, to show you the kind of anxiety that people have. Walked into a statistics class, first night. These are adults, about 30, 40 years, coming back to school. Turned to a lady, and I said, would you mind telling us your name? There was a long pause. She says, you know, it was right on the tip of my tongue. She could not come up with her. She was so anxious. So she came up later and she said, you know I'm going to fail. I said, why do you, she says, I am so terrified. I said, well, you want to know a little secret? I know you're going to succeed. Oh, she said, you're just saying that to me. I said, no. She said, how do you know that? I said, I'll tell you how I know it. First of all, I've dealt with hundreds of students just like you. You're a mature woman. You're focused. You want to do this. And if you simply follow, I know you're going to follow my directions. And I know you're going to succeed. I'll take responsibility for you. Well, at the end of the course, she came up and she said, I didn't know I was so good in mathematics. What's the next course in statistics?
Oh.
Well, that's a matter of quieting that left brain down, quieting it right on down, because that's my job. It's already there. They already understand it.
Yeah.
All it is a novel arrangement of arithmetic.
Yeah.
That's all in the world it is. But we have, through academic, we we have managed to gobbledygook it up. Calculus is another one. Calculus, I'm always fascinated by this. This has to be the simplest idea since kindergarten. But we've convinced people that, my God, you've got to be a genius. Well, wait a minute. Sir Isaac Newton came up with the idea. Let's see where Isaac Newton was. Isaac Newton was at the bottom of his elementary school class. Did you know that? Did you realize that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. When he went into Cambridge at 19, he was a student. He had a little more than arithmetic. Hey, that tells you immediately this can't be a complicated idea, and it isn't.
Yeah.
Now, I happen to have one of the most outstanding instructors I think I've ever met, by the name of Professor Dana Sudborough. Little guy, balding guy, very ordinary looking guy, but in the first exposure I was listening to him, he was able to communicate differential and integral calculus. The minute he put that up with a few little diagrams, I said, well, of course. I mean, that to me is a real prince.
Yeah.
That's the kind of person you'll remember the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Now, he did it in the first exposure. He did it within a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to it. And so I'm always puzzled by this great mythology that this is something difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Well, last question I want to ask you is one I ask most everybody I talk with, and that's this: what is one piece of advice or that you'd give to an adult who's kind of decided, I want to learn another language?
Yeah, let me help you. I get that all the time. Well, you have community colleges now. These are one of the great, best kept secrets in America. The community colleges, they do an amazing job. Those instructors are selected because they do an excellent job of teaching. And they're the most unappreciated, educational institution. I would call up the community college and ask to speak to the instructor and find out what they know about TPR. Now, if they don't know anything, run fast, run far. But if they do, say, would you mind if I sat in first meeting to get some feeling for it? You'll know within 5 minutes whether or not this is going to work for you.
Yeah.
And if you're comfortable and the guy is doing, or woman doing they're on the right track, stick with them. You can find out. They'll tell you.
Yeah.
What do you know about this? What do you know? Tell me how do you conduct your class?
Sure.
And that's the way I would do it. The other way I do it is call out professional associations in Italian, Spanish. Say, I want to contact an instructor who knows TPR, total physical response. They're using it. I want to talk to them.
Okay. Yeah.
And don't waste your time. If they don't know anything, stay away from it. I don't want you to fail. I don't want to see failure.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Dr. Asher, I just want to thank you for taking the time to be with me today. I'm
Sure.
very excited to share this with the viewers of my website, and I think there's just a whole lot here that people are going to be really excited to hear, and some real great information for all of us. So,
thanks, Aaron. I appreciate the invitation, and you're doing good work. Keep it up.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
All
Bye-bye.
right.